All right, class, welcome to our week 3 supplemental video. We are going to talk a little bit more about our narrative paper, so let's go ahead and get started. As long as I can move the slide. All right. So, quick reminders. Remember that this week we are reading page 155 to 167 in the Longman Writer. Be sure to participate not only in the week 2 discussion board, but also in the week 3 discussion board. We also have a quiz over list 2. I will let you know the password. It is animals. That was supposed to be whispered. Animals. It's hard to whisper when you have like a microphone right this. Anyway, so keep in mind that our final draft for Essay 2 is due by the end of week 4. That is Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Keep that in mind. Your final draft for Essay 1 is due by the end of this week. So this week, September 11th at 11:59 p.m. So the end of week 3 because of all the changes that have gone on. Now remember, week 2 and 3 are overlapping. So that's an important thing to keep in mind because we are trying to make up some time for the week that I missed. So keep those things in mind. I wanted to just quickly go over a few questions that I've been having asked and other questions that haven't been asked yet about the narrative. So we're working on narrative essays, and remember, this is telling a story. So here are some questions that I've been thinking about, that I've been receiving from people. What should I write about? What if I've never faced an injustice? Does my narrative have to be complete? Can I write my life story? Does my writing have to use big words? So we're going to take each of these and break them down. So what should I write about? Okay, let's remember what the assignment description is. And you can find the assignment description in course documents. So let me go ahead and open that up, see if I can get it. So you go over to our navigation area. That doesn't, click on course documents, there it is. And you're going to be here. And as you scroll down, you'll find Essay 2, the narrative essay. You'll be able to find that. Okay, so remember, a narrative essay is an assignment. In this assignment, you are being asked to be observant within a memory of your own experience. So you're not sharing a short story, you're sharing your own experience. So narrative is basically a story. But in terms of our paper, it's a real story, something actually happened, something you've experienced. So it's usually told in the first person perspective, I, me, that kind of stuff. It's also usually has a point, like why would you be sharing this info with me? And our points for our particular story, I'll talk about in a second. Now, a narrative is also going to have the conventions of a story. That is the plot, characters, setting, climax, a clear ending. All those things happen in a story. And that's what we want to make sure we talk about. Now, the week 3 lecture presentation goes over each of those in quite detail, so make sure that you check that out. Now, your job with this particular essay is to write about a time when you were keenly aware of an injustice, or an experience that maintained or shattered a childhood belief, or an occasion in which you volunteered or donated to something that you believed in. Okay, so you have a few choices, and hopefully they're broad enough that everybody can kind of pick something. But there's 3 choices. If you've experienced an injustice, you have maintained or shattered a childhood belief, or you have volunteered or donated to something that you believe in. One question that I get probably every semester that I have this essay as an assignment is, what if I've never faced an injustice? And it's a very common question, and especially when you think about, okay, you guys are all high school students, and you've lived in the same town all your life, or something along that, you feel like you haven't ever experienced anything big. But I would say that this can be interpreted loosely, for one thing. But keep in mind that there are other options with this assignment. You could talk about a shattered or upheld childhood belief. So something that you believed as a kid and then you found out that it's really true. Or something you believed as a kid and you found out that no, that's actually a lie. Like what? Anyway, I won't shatter any of your childhood beliefs with my example. But or you could talk about a time that you donated your time or your effort to a cause that you believed in, whether that was, taking food to a food bank or going on a mission trip or spending time going door to door getting people out to vote or whatever it is that you might have done to volunteer or donate your own time to something you believed in. So that's one thing. You don't have to talk about injustice if you don't feel like it. Now, let's talk about the word injustice. What is this? So, injustice, according to dictionary.com, is the quality or fact of being unjust or inequity. Inequity is like something not being equal. It's a violation of a person's rights, an unjust or unfair action or treatment, or it's something that is unfair or what you perceive as wrong. Okay, so that can broaden the scope quite a bit. So we can move on from like a political injustice, or we can move on from dealing with racism or discrimination, which are really big injustices, right? We can move on from that and look at something else. Maybe it was a kid that you saw being bullied at school and you didn't do anything about it. Or it could have been a time that your parents told you that you couldn't do something that you thought it was an unfair choice on their part. So it doesn't have to be this big explosive thing that happened in your life. We don't have to have huge, big experiences to be able to share a narrative of our own story. So small experiences make up who we are oftentimes. So now the other thing to keep in mind is that you don't necessarily have to be the one experiencing the injustice. I mentioned an example of a kid getting bullied and you didn't do anything about it. So that's not you experiencing that injustice. It's you watching it, not taking part in fixing it, but it's not you actually experiencing the injustice. I actually had a really cool paper written one time by a student um, about viewing an injustice. So this girl is at school and she is of a very small population of African Americans in her school. Like there's only a few, and um, and one kid comes up to her and says, oh, I wouldn't date anybody that's black, and the other. So you're listening to this kid saying it. That's what so the paper was about hearing this kid saying that to that girl and how that made them feel. So you can still feel injustice when you're not the one experiencing the injustice, if that makes sense. I had an example. It was kind of funny. So I had a student one time that was in the bathroom, and I was, as teachers, we kind of overhear things, but she said, "Oh, I wish I wasn't so fat," or something like that. And another girl goes, "Oh, but you're beautiful." And she said, "I know, I'm beautiful. I just wish I wasn't fat." So there was this injustice kind of element. It was a really funny moment in terms of her response. "I know I'm beautiful. I'm just wish I wasn't fat." So it was kind of just a perception kind of thing that could be seen as unjust. So you can view or be an audience of an injustice rather than being the one experiencing it. And it doesn't have to be some big, amazing moment. It can be a small moment. Okay, so does my story have to be complete? The quick answer is yes and no. Okay, so yes, the work needs to feel complete. It means to have something that brings it all together. Like I mentioned, a narrative generally has a point. So it does need to bring everything together for sure. But I don't want to see like cliffhangers or choose your own adventure kind of thing where you leave the reader open and go, "Oh, what happens next? I have no idea. Why are you sharing this story with me? I don't know the point." So we still need to feel that point. So yes, it needs to feel finished, but no, it doesn't have to be wrapped up into a pretty package. You know, and because of this viewing of this injustice, my life has changed, blah 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 blah. We don't have to go into rote conclusions with this. It can have kind of an overall feeling of, okay, life does go on after this narrative. Because we really only have 3 pages. And some people go, whoa, that's a lot of pages to fill up. But it really isn't when you think of it in the long term. So you don't have to share your entire life story or wrap it up into a nice, pretty package. It just needs to have a feeling of completion, whether that is, sharing what you learned from the experience, or maybe it's the closing of a door or walking out of the room or whatever it may be, some sort of conclusion element that makes the story feel complete. Okay, here's the other one. Can I write my life story? The quick answer is no. And yes. Okay, so no, you should not focus on a really large amount of time. You should definitely try zooming in on the time period in order to allow you to have time in the paper to really dig deep into those descriptive elements that we want to use. But yes, you can include stories from your past to give the reader a sense of background. So you can include flashbacks and flash forwards where we look at an experience, say, you know, seeing an injustice or seeing something that happened when you were a kid, like the whole idea of not believing in Santa Claus anymore. So you remember a conversation that you had when you were in second grade with your, uh, table mate, and she said, "Oh, I hate Santa Claus. I don't think he's real." And you flash forward to the moment that you see your parents putting presents under the tree. So that would be giving some background information, like that sowed the seed of the um, shattered childhood belief, and then go back to that moment. So, yes, you can share multiple stories within your past to give us background, but you don't need to share your entire life story or a long, expansive time in your paper, if that makes sense. Okay, does my writing have to use big words? Here we just had an essay where you are supposed to be as descriptive as possible using all 5 senses. And we want to use unique and original wording, but we don't have to use like the longest and most drawn out wording. We don't have to sound like we are a textbook. So big words don't necessarily mean good writing. So keep in mind, are you using, quote, big words that are in your vocabulary? If they are in your vocabulary, great, definitely use them because that's a natural voice for you. Or, other question, are they going to help or hinder your story? If you use these big professional looking words that kind of bog things down and don't let the story move, then it's really worthless to have. So keep in mind that one element of good writing is to keep in mind that good writing is clear. So the audience needs to be able to understand what you're saying. So if you're going to keep using these big highfalutin words, then it can bog down the reader's understanding of what you're trying to say. Keep in mind that you don't have to describe every little detail. Yes, we just wrote a descriptive essay where we wrote from all 5 senses and tried to really immerse ourselves in that descriptive detail. And yes, I want you to use your 5 senses in your narrative writing, but do you have to do every little thing? No. Share the sensory details that enhance your story, so that are important, that need to be there to give the reader a sense of place, a sense of setting, to give the reader a sense of emotion. Keep those things in mind. So use them with purpose instead of just listing sensory details. And instead of using big words for the sake of having big words, try to engage the reader's interest with dynamic word choice. So use words that are interesting and engaging. Instead of using the word good, try to find another word that makes sense because everyone's perception of good is different. Here I defined good writing, so that works better. But, awesome. Awesome is one of those words I like to use it. Great, awesome. But really, they kind of turn into vague words because we don't know exactly my perception of awesome versus your perception of awesome. So, for instance, I had a friend that came to the United States from Ghana, and he often used the word awesome, but his perception of the word awesome meant that it was awe inspiring. So it could be terrible, it could be an awful thing, but he used awesome because of the meaning of awe-inspiring. It made him like, wow, that's really big, or wow, that was really terrible. It's awesome. Instead of like, yeah, that's great, awesome. So your perception of the word can definitely be different. So keep in mind that when you work on word choice, you need to use dynamic and engaging language that the reader can kind of visualize what you're talking about. Okay, so those were the questions that I've had. If you have any other questions, please be sure to email or text or call me with those, and we will continue working on narrative. So thanks so much. I appreciate your patience and your hard work. So we'll see you in the classroom.